So how would you like to go to bed every night worried about getting bitten by dozens or even hundreds of these little pests? Probably doesn't sound like a lot of fun, right? But according to a 2008 study from an entomologist named Michael Potter, although bedbugs were very rare in the second half of the last century in this country, they've become much more prevalent since then. And you have a much better chance of avoiding a bedbug infestation if you know more about them and the way they behave. So this past semester, I've conducted a lot of research on this topic, and also about 8 years ago, I had the misfortune of having a bedbug infestation. So I can tell you that this is something that can become a serious problem if it's not dealt with promptly and correctly. So today I want to talk about 3 things. Bedbugs themselves and the way they behave, some of their characteristics. Then I'll move on to talking about some of the effects they can have on the health of humans, and finally, different ways you can eradicate them. So in the report I mentioned earlier by Michael Potter, he lays out some of their characteristics. Now, unlike cockroaches, they're not attracted to dirt or grime. They're only attracted to warm-blooded hosts. So they prefer humans, but they will also go after other warm-blooded animals. They're about 5 millimeters in length, as you can see better here in proportion to the penny. They're also flat. This is one of their key characteristics. They're about the width of a piece of paper, as you can see better here. This is what allows them to hide in mattresses and box springs, as well as in baseboards and any crevices they can find. It's also what allows them to travel. They will crawl into suitcases or clothing, and they're often transported through hotels, movie theaters, restaurants, anywhere where people are stationary for an extended period of time. Bedbugs are also very elusive. It's hard to catch them. According to a 2012 study from the entomological journal called Psyche, bedbugs are sensitive to heat and carbon dioxide. And so since your body temperature decreases when you fall asleep, that's their cue. That's how they know to come and get you. They generally won't come out until they know you're asleep. So now I've talked about some of the characteristics of bedbugs. I'm going to move on to talking about some of the effects they can have on your health. So in 2010, the EPA and the CDC put out a joint statement listing some of these effects. Now, while some people will have no reaction whatsoever, others will have allergic reactions of varying proportions. Of course, the bites can cause major welts. I won't gross you out by showing any pictures, but if you'd like to, you can look them up on your own. They can also cause some mental effects, such as anxiety and insomnia. And this really makes sense because if you think about it, you're lying there in bed, and the only defense you have against being bitten is basically not falling asleep. So that doesn't help. It doesn't help you fall asleep at all. So now that, also as a side note, they can also really hurt you financially because getting professional help to exterminate them isn't cheap. So now I've talked about their health effects, I'm going to move on to how you can exterminate them, different methods there are. This past year, the EPA put out a list of methods, and these are all do-it-yourself methods. They're mainly divided into chemical means and non-chemical means. So the non-chemical means mainly focus on temperature, putting them into situations that are either too hot or too cold for them to survive. So this would be things like putting your clothing and bedding through the washer and dryer with a dryer on high heat, using a steam cleaner, putting items you think might be infested in a freezer or outside in the wintertime for an extended period of time, of course. So anything to do with temperature, although I wouldn't recommend like burning your house down. That might be going a little too far. There are also some chemical means you can use. The EPA recommends several non-toxic pesticides. What my family used back in the day was a drying agent called Diatomaceous Earth. And this is a powder that you put down by the legs of your bed and around any crevices where you think they might be hiding. The way it works is that when they walk over it, you can see their exoskeletons here. It absorbs the moisture from those exoskeletons, so they break down and they die of dehydration. Now, the most expensive way, it's the most thorough, is to get professional help. So there are a couple methods that exterminators use to eradicate bed bugs. One of them is called the heat treatment, and this method, everybody has to evacuate the house. The entire house is heated to about 124 degrees. This kills all the bugs and their eggs. You don't have to worry about being thorough and getting in every crevice, especially if you don't know where they are. Just heat the entire house and kill them all. Another method that's used by the company Terminex, which is the one my family used, is called rapid freeze technology. So in this one, they spray tiny little frozen particles of carbon dioxide, which is also known as dry ice, in and around the bedding areas, wherever you think they might be hiding. And it's so cold that it kills the bugs and their eggs on contact. And it also leaves a non-toxic residue. So to recap, I talked about bedbugs themselves and some of their characteristics. I then talked about their health effects, and finally, different ways you can exterminate them. So if the problem is dealt with correctly and as soon as possible, it's going to be much less of a headache than it needs to be. And it's also better to be more thorough and err on the side of caution. That's the safest decision to make, and you won't lose sleep over it. Thank you very much.